there's a word that we need to talk about. There's a word that we need to stop using. Words have history. Words have a history. So that means words don't change. The meanings of words don't evolve, they don't change because they have a historical context. And there's a word that I've been hearing people say that certain people think is okay to use. And what you have to understand is words hurt. Words hurt, right? So that means words are violence. Just like if someone punches you in the face is like if someone says an offensive word to you. It's the same thing. And it requires equal retaliation. So if you're in a back alley being beaten to death and you kill someone in self-defense, you're perfectly justified. In the same way, someone says a word to you that's hurtful and you kill them, that's just self-defense. So anyway, let's get to the substance. The substance here. What am I talking about? What word? I think we all know it. We all know what word I'm talking about that people want to use and is unacceptable to use because of its historical context. Merriam-Webster.com has an article about it called The Clinical History of I'm not going to say that word. I'm not going to say that word. And I'm not going to say that word either. These words have a less than savory past. So, because of how they were used in the past, that means you can't use them today. Many of us have had occasion to express displeasure with the actions or behavior of another, and in order to do so, have chosen to impugn that person's level, impugn. Oh boy, they're pulling out the big words on my low IQ. That person's level of intelligence with a choice, insulting word or two. Or way more than two, it depends. We're fine with that. I just want you to have a disclaimer. I'm not okay with it. I'm not okay with it. Merriam-Webster, that this is their words, not mine. They say they're fine with it, but I'm not fine with it. And you shouldn't either. We would like to point out that a certain contingent of go-to insults have a history of clinical use, which may make them less desirable to use than others. So, this clinical use, they have a history of clinical use. And that means you're not allowed to say them. These words that I'm not going to say were not so long ago used in a psychological classification system, and each one was assigned to a fairly specific range of abilities. That one I word. Those so defective that the mental development never exceeds that of a normal child of about 2 years. That other word that I'm not going to say. Those whose development is higher than that of that word, but whose intelligence does not exceed that of a normal child of about 7 years. And then that last word that I'm not going to say. Those whose mental development is above that of that word, but does not exceed that of a normal child of about 12 years. So even if you call someone a child, that's equally as offensive, because you're calling them a child. If you say you're acting like a child, and I'm not saying that to anyone, I'm just saying it as an example. That's just a disclaimer. I don't mean it when I say that, when I say someone's being a child, acting like a child. But you can't say that because they're not a child. So that means you're not allowed to say it. And then this goes into the past history of how it was used before that, but that's we'll just gloss over that. The clinical applications of these words is now a thing of the past, and we hope no one reading this would be so callous as to try to resurrect their use. God forbid anyone use a medical term. Never. Never. It may be found as terms of opprobrium for someone who acts stupidly but is not necessarily cognitively impaired. See, look at these examples. I'm not even going to read that because it's so disgusting. We've progressed. We have come out of this. So it's time to stop going back and bringing up those old wounds. And then the conclusion. So if you choose to use these words in some hierarchical order to separate those drivers who cut you off on the highway from those who merely fail to turn off their blinkers, we're not in a position to stop you. And I would personally like to see that changed. Please contact your local congressman and tell them that use of these words is not acceptable. We need a constitutional amendment to stop the spread of these harmful words. These words are damaging. They're harmful. They insult the dignity of people. And that means we have to stop using them. But this end on a high note. However, we will point out that the English language is broad and magnificent enough that when you really need to lay into someone, you may do so in a properly considerate manner, and without resorting to potentially offensive and antiquated psychological jargon. Because, of course, when you use any slur, or if you use any insult, the last thing you want to do is offend someone or insult them. If you're using an insult, the last thing you want to do is insult them. If you're using a slur, the last thing you want to do is offend someone. Jobbernowl, loblolly, driveler, just a glimpse of the non-clinical ways our language has of referring to those chuckleheads in your way. Of course, I would like to add to this list of acceptable words the N-word. You know the N-word I'm talking about. Nincompoop. Of course, that's an acceptable word to use. And then, of course, my favorite one is driveler. Drivel, of course, is a word for drool, so if they're a driveler, they're a drooler. So, instead of calling them one of these three horrible, insensitive, offensive words, just call someone a drooling retard.